All right, everybody, welcome back to the Performance Podcast Studios. This is the Local Lens Media Podcast. My name is Adam Dobbins. I'm the Director of Sales here at Walnut Media, and I'm joined by one of our best account executives, an elite account executive, finalist for National Account Executive of the Year at the Radio Wayne Awards, Mr. Andrew Botwinick.
Well, and also, you kind of sold yourself short a little bit. Director of Sales for the year or DOS for the year?
I don't like to talk about it. I didn't win.
Well, so neither did I. So we'll just keep it moving.
All right. So this episode, we're pretty excited because it's sponsored by, in our opinion, the best bank in Omaha, Great Plains State Bank. All kinds of amazing things going on at Great Plains State Bank. If you're wanting to go to a bank where you can feel the culture when you walk in the door, the people are friendly, know you by name, and you feel like you're actually a part of a family, a banking family, and they're looking out for your best interests, reach out to GPS Bank because it's an amazing place. You walk in it's just instant culture as soon as you walk in the door. They're doing it different there.
Well, and that's mostly because it's a local bank, so you're not getting that kind of national chain bank where you're almost just a number and an account that they have. And realistically, with Great Plains State Bank, if your banking and checking account is not paying you, you should switch.
Get out of there.
At Great Plains State Bank, they have Kasasa checking accounts, they have CDs, they have everything that you could possibly be wanting.
I just like to say Kasasa.
Kasasa is a great word.
That's a fun word.
It rolls right off the tongue. You can earn high interest just for doing a few banking basics. You can open up a Kasasa checking account today at Great Plains State Bank, who is also an equal housing lender.
Wow. Love it. Wonderful place. Guys, take a look behind us right now. We have our brand new sign up for the Performance Podcast Studios. You too can have a podcast at Performance Podcast Studios. Got a lot of cool things going on here, so we're excited to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's really coming into its own here, so got a pretty cool studio here, and I got to be honest, if these guys can make us sound good, they're pretty good at their jobs.
Yeah, I know it's a very tough job for Grant and the rest of the team on Performance Podcast, so I know that they spend frivolous hours making us sound awesome.
Is that why he looks all disheveled and sweaty at the end of every one of our podcasts? It's just like that stressful.
Probably.
Okay. So on to business. In this first episode, we're going to be talking about, and we alluded to this in our last episode, which, guys, it took a little bit of time to go into this one. Had a couple emails come through. Did you guys stop doing the podcast already? No, it's fourth quarter. It's go time. So we've had to move it back a lot of times. Got a lot of goals as a media company that we're trying to hit. And obviously clients come first, and we're able to squeeze one in over our lunch break today. So we're really talking about their IFMs, individually focused meetings, or one-on-ones traditionally, they're called. And these meetings that you have every week, they really set the tone for the week, and they can really, from a leadership perspective and an account executive perspective, can make or break your week. It really is an opportunity. And, we talked about this in our pre-production meeting. It's not a one-on-one, or an IFM is not meant to be a beat down or a got ya, or, I just caught you not doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be a strategy session where you're digging into the activity for the week and finding out from a leadership perspective, what are the hurdles that my account executives are experiencing? As a leader, how can I step in and help remove those hurdles? Do we need some creative help? Can we put our heads together and really come up with an amazing marketing strategy for our clients that's going to take their business to the next level? And I think, again, one-on-ones from a leadership perspective, on Mondays, it can be a little bit grueling because, depending on how many account executives you have, it can be all day. I know certain director of sales or general sales managers or local sales managers that spend all Monday, even into Tuesday, doing their one-on-ones. And that's the whole first half of their week. Then I also know other sales managers that are like, hey, I'm talking to my account executives pretty much throughout the week. We don't do one-on-ones. We don't really need it. And I think that really depends on how established your account executives are. And I mean, if you're working with a bunch of 10, 15, 20-year veterans, you probably don't need to do a weekly one-on-one with them because they are proven. They know what they're doing, and they're going to probably come to you if they need any help. But I'm always one to err on the side of caution. Let's go for the one-on-one. Let's dig in, see if there's any place that we can identify ways that we can be more efficient and more effective. And even 20, 30-year account executives can definitely use that help. But, Andrew, digging into this, what are some of the most important things that you really find in a one-on-one or an IFM that really helps you as an account executive take it to the next level?
I think from my perspective, honestly, the best part about a one-on-one is the fact that it's not, like you said earlier, it's not a gotcha moment. And if it does feel like a gotcha moment, then you're not doing the right things throughout the previous week to begin with. It seems like this is our Q4 saying, but activity breeds success.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're not making the right amount of touch points, setting the right amount of meetings, the right proposals, CNAs, all that kind of stuff, that all funnels into the same kind of book of business. I mean, everybody internally they have their own book of business. And the best part about a one-on-one or an individual focused meeting for me is that kind of checks and balance of being able to look and audit what I did the last week and say, man, I really killed it on Wednesday. I had 20 touch points. Thursday, I had 3 meetings and I wasn't able to get out there and make as many prospect calls as I probably could have. If I didn't have those meetings. And you can kind of see how the last week plays a story into how this week has prepped. Because I know personally for me last week I had a busy week. I had 6, 7 meetings and I had 1 or 2 almost every single day. And so this week I didn't have as many meetings as I'm normally used to having because I spent so much time last week prepping for those meetings. And when I came into my IFM this week, it was something where I kind of noticed it and was like, okay, well, this week I'm going to be doing a lot more calling to make sure that next week I have enough meetings to kind of make up for that. So if I didn't have a one-on-one or an IFM to kind of audit how I was the previous week, I might not have even recognized, I probably would have internally, but saying it out loud and being like, oh man, this is really a focus for me this week.
Yeah. And you got to be okay with there being ebbs and flows. And as a sales leader, especially if you've been an account executive before that, that there's going to be weeks where you're, reaping the rewards of your hard work and your prospecting, and you're going to have 4 or 5 proposals, and you got to spend extra time preparing for those. And then you don't have as much time to prospect. And so then following the next week, you're like, okay, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the phone, making sure that I fill up that next week. And we know, we talk about this all the time, Andrew, that going into a week, if you want to be on track to be able to hit your goals, you need to have a minimum of, on average, about 5 to 6 CNAs set a week when it's that CNA heavy week. Because if you don't, you're not going to be doing the right amount of activity that's going to lead to the sales numbers that you need to hit. And that's the huge point behind it. Also, with that too, is, when there's the weeks when you have a ton of appointments, you got to manage your calendar as if you own your own small business, and you got to analyze it and identify gaps in your calendar and run it the most efficient way possible. So I like to see calendars split out where there's a section time that you're going to be locked in prospecting for 2 to 3 hours. And that's all you're going to be doing. Then after that, it's secondary follow-ups with emails, stop-ins. Are you going to send them a text message? Or are you going to message them on LinkedIn? Just those different touch points. Send it, I don't know if I just said this now, an email, whatever that is, that you're exercising those different touch points. And then you're carving out time to prepare for your proposals, to do research on some of your prospects, different things like that. And if you're managing your week in a very strategic way, it's going to set you up for more success. Also, something else that I did is I'm crazy about self-development, and I would always carve out at least at an hour every single week to get on LBS or go through YouTube and look up, or even just sit and read literature or watch videos on things that are going to make me better at what I do. We always say that when you go into battle, you have to sharpen your sword. And if you go in with a dull sword, you're not going to be as effective. So managing that calendar really effectively, I feel like, is a huge pathway to success.
It's important because I know I've fallen habit to this from time and time again. When I'll set up a meeting and it's a 30-minute drive, you have to account for that drive time. I usually throw in an hour-long meeting, and if it goes long, it goes long. But if I've got something immediately right after it, not on my end, I usually account for that. But there's other AEs that I've known of that have scheduled meetings back to back. There's not enough drive time to be able to go from one meeting to the next. Or if the first meeting has some additional questions and you're having a great conversation and you block out an hour, but the meeting goes an hour and a half, Now you've got even less time to get to that next appointment. So just kind of using, like Adam said, using that calendar as a way to not only make sure that things are in place where they need to be, but also using it as kind of a daily planner. I know that's exactly what a calendar is supposed to be, but actually using it as what its intended purpose is, instead of just throwing on a few things, because my director of sales wants me to put in an hour or two for prospecting. Actually using it for that time instead of just putting it in there as a placeholder is important.
And I think I can speak for most other sales leaders that putting in that drive time is very important, because if you have an hour meeting set with an account executive and their client or prospective client, and then you have another account executive that sees that block of time that's available right there, they're going to schedule you for that appointment. If you're an engaged sales leader and actually going to appointments with your account executives, and if you're 25, 30 minutes away, it's going to be really difficult to get to that appointment. And if you get there, you're probably going to be late, unprepared, and not nearly as effective in that meeting as you should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's a huge thing. And another one of the things that I think, aside from kind of looking at calendar and weekly prep for a one-on-one and IFM, and I don't know if this is a good segue for this, but a lot of what you and I do on my IFMs are brainstorm for clients. I know there's a lot of clients where if I had a CNA with a client the previous week and we left it as, we're going to strategize some ideas, see how we can best utilize what our marketing capabilities can do to fix your current problems. That's what you and I do a lot of in the one-on-ones and IFMs, are sitting down and actually saying, okay, well, this is what the client told me. How can we best maximize a way to figure out a solution to that problem without being over budget or showing them the most amount of value for what they're going to be getting on their end?
Well, and that's something that you should be able to count on as an account executive, is having a sales leader that you can go in and collaborate with, and that you can go in and be like, okay, I have a few ideas, but what are some ideas that that you have? Because maybe they'll be better, or maybe they will alter the ideas that you currently have. I mean, that's what I do with my leader. I'll bring ideas to him, and he's an idea machine. So he's going to take about every idea I have and have about 20 that are way better. So I usually go to him with those because he can fire them off like crazy. And certain sales leaders are better at that than others, but you learn how to develop relationships with people in the building that are going to be those idea generators for you. And that's going to be what's going to help close a lot of those proposals. Is if you walk in with a great idea, then they're going to be interested, because we always talk about that a client's going to spend any reasonable amount of money if they think it's going to help their business. You know how many meetings I've been in, Andrew, and you have too, where the client tells you they have no money, no budget at all. It's spent. But then if you pitch them an idea that they absolutely love, and they see a pathway to get a quick return on that investment and then some, they figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and I know we had a meeting, you and I did a couple weeks ago, where we went on the meeting and had this great idea. We showed him the idea and he was like, nah, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in doing anything with you guys. And we kind of continued to ask a couple questions. And it turned out that when he was answering those questions, he was realizing that what we had shown him and what we had in front of him was something that he probably should be doing anyway. Yeah. So we had eventually went from going in, showing them this idea that we think is going to be beneficial for their business, and then them saying, oh, I'm not interested, no thanks. And then circling back around to, okay, well, now I'm going to actually consider this as an opportunity for the rest of Q4 and into 25.
Yeah. And that's, again, it's a strategy session to, again, talk about potential barriers. And, if you get a no or a pushback on something, you got to figure out a way around it. To continue to ask more questions and pivot, because it's not if you're going to get objections, it's when and what. And if you're not prepared for that at all, I've been in so many meetings where I've seen an account executive get an objection and they just stop dead in their tracks and they're defeated. And if you're not able to continue to work through that, you're not going to be nearly as effective and nearly as successful as you would if you're able to talk through those and pivot. And that goes back to, again, being able to tell the story of your stations, being able to talk about past client successes and your vision for that client and the path that the marketing path that we're going to take them on. And that should be a collaborative experience between the account executive, the client, and the sales leader. When you get that many heads in the game that are creative, and with the business owner that is completely invested in their organization, and we become more and more invested every single time we meet with the client, where by the second or third time we meet, we feel like we're part of the organization. Yeah. You start to create magic at that point. But when you have an account executive that just writes up the marketing plan on their own, you're leaving so many potential ideas on the table, and you're not really uncovering every stone to see, what if we did this? What if we tried this? Because I'm every meeting I've been in, and I don't know what you think, but the more good ideas you have, seems like it's better.
Well, and it's always easier too to come in with, if you have a director of sales or a regional manager or whoever you have additionally from leadership with you in some of those meetings, and not necessarily in the IFMs or the one-on-ones, but in the actual CNAs and proposal meetings. If you come in with 5 different ideas, it first of all tells the client that, A, you spent a lot of time talking about their business last week. If you've got 5 different creative ideas that can help grow their business, that solves the problem that they told you in the previous week that they had.
Yeah.
But also, B, you figure out which ones the client likes and sticks to and gravitates to. Because it could be, if I go in and I'm pitching them connected TV, and I go in and we pitch them connected TV, and that's the only thing I brought them, they may not like it. They might have had a bad experience with connected TV in the past, which is an objection you can overcome. But if they're already hesitant to do it, who's to say that after a month or two, they might be like, I'm not really seeing any results from it. When in reality, if you pitch them mobile to social or radio or a live remote or any of these other opportunities that are custom made for the client, it's not just something you picked up off the printer. That's what an individual focus meeting and an IFM and a one-on-one should be, is figuring out a different valid business reason, or VBR, that is specific to that client. And it's not just something where you can go down every single business in a specific category and pitch them the same thing, because that's not how people do business.
Yeah. And if you're going into a meeting without a VBR or making a call without a valid business reason, you probably shouldn't be doing that at all. Because
hang up the phone. Yeah,
hang up the phone. You're not going to probably get a meeting unless somebody is taking charity calls and just wants to meet with you and waste their time. And that's what you work with in one-on-ones with your sales leader. And in my role, I want to see, okay, who are you calling on? Who are we talking to? Who are we meeting with? And I want to follow each step of the process. And what's our valid business reason for each of them? That might change as the meeting goes, but there needs to be something put in place. And more clients are going to take a meeting with you if you have a valid business reason and an idea. A lot of account executives just call them like, hey, I got a package for you. You want to take a look at it? Nope. They generally don't. But if you have an idea and an actual legitimate reason why they should be meeting with you, they're a lot more likely to be intrigued and want to take that meeting.
Well, and it also helps too whenever you're building a relationship with a client. I know I've got a few clients that I've worked with that have had bad media experiences in the past, but I came in, sat down, did the CNA with them, showed them something specific for their business that helps their needs. And now they call me weekly and say, hey, what if for an endorsement that they have with one of our on-air talent, can we talk about this week? Of course we can talk about that, because that's what this is supposed to be. It's not something where it's a package that I just pulled off the printer and it's 30 commercials every single month for 2 months and it's this price, blah, 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 blah. And it's something that's just very cookie cutter. It should be a marketing plan that is an actual marketing plan that has moving pieces to it that you can update and change. That way, whenever stuff's important and seasonal for the client, you're able to get that on your end too.
Yeah. And you sit there and talk about the client, and we talk about every single radio station that you represent, and does it fit their target demo? Is it going to speak to who they're trying to directly speak to? Every digital tactic that your digital department has, is that going to effectively drive home the goal that they're trying to reach? And collaborate with all of those different pieces, come up with a multifaceted marketing program with multiple touch points. That's what is going to get the client the results that they want. And again, that work starts in that IFM, in the one-on-one. You build that together. As the account executive, you need to come to the IFM prepared with some ideas, with everything filled out. Like, we have a form with our organization that we fill out to make sure that we're maximizing that time. So, we come in ready to go, and we can start throwing ideas back and forth right away. And I feel like, and you tell me what you think, I feel like that makes the time more efficient, and we're able to kind of hit the ground running right away.
It does. And it doesn't feel like Adam said at the beginning of the podcast, where it's a gotcha moment, where if you fill out, we have on there a percentage to goal for each individual market within our station, or each individual station within our market. And if there's one station where if I had a lower number on it, it's just something that we point out and say, hey, this could be a focus this week, or try and see if we can figure out a way to do this. Because at the end of the day, if I meet with a client, it doesn't make sense for the client, there's not that extra push to say, oh, well, I'm this close to getting the budget for this particular station. If it doesn't make sense for the client, whenever we get later into the IFM, when we talk about VBRs and all of that stuff, that's whenever we sit back and we realize and go, oh, okay, well, this client that we thought could be a good fit for this, maybe they're not. Let's look at this. This is a different opportunity where if we can show value in what we do, maybe there's a bigger opportunity than just trying to get a small extra little push on a specific station.
You know, from a leadership perspective with an IFM, it is a huge opportunity to follow up on field coaching opportunities too. You know, no matter how established you are as an account executive, you're not going to probably have a perfect CNA or a perfect proposal. No. There's going to be gaps and things that you forget about, or you're like, oh, I should have talked to him about this, or I should have asked this. And that IFM is a great opportunity to address those. I like to try to address them right away after the meeting, so it's fresh. But sometimes you don't have time to do that. You're running right to the next meeting. So I really like to utilize that opportunity to address some field coaching opportunities to continue to improve. And another huge part, Andrew, for me is, you know, we want to be able to talk about not only the proposals that we didn't close and got maybe told no on, and look in the mirror and think, okay, what could we have done differently? Maybe nothing. Maybe they just didn't have the budget and now it's not the right time. But on top of that, also, what are some successes? Let's take a little bit of time, slow down, and talk about what we did well, because we do really well in this industry talking about what we didn't do well and what we need to do better. It's important to me as a leader to celebrate the positives and the exciting things. That's, for me, what's fun. And I like to have a healthy balance in the IFMs and just in general in the culture in the building. I want every single account executive that works for me and for the media company that I represent to feel appreciated, that they're not just a number, that they're not just, hey, you're just here to provide revenue for the organization, that, you know, we're going to celebrate your hard work and that you made a ton of prospecting calls this week. And it wasn't just about the quantity. You had some quality there. You set a lot of CNA meetings, and guess what? You got this many proposals out of it and closed this much business. Yeah. It tells a story. It tells a story that activity breeds success. If you're making calls and doing research and collaborating with your leader, you can sit there and look at the story from beginning to end and say, God, that 1 week, that was horrible. I made 125 prospecting calls that week, and I went home at the end of the week on the weekend and I just wanted to be left alone because I was mentally exhausted. Yeah. But then all of a sudden you look and you're like, oh man, I have 8 CNAs this next week. I really set myself up for some great opportunity. Those, and again, and not to sound cheesy, but the you know, what doesn't break you makes you. And that's really what it is in those weeks where you're heavily prospecting. Lean on your sales leader. You know, it's not their job to sit in their office and check their emails. They should be collaborating with you. Let's get in a room together. Let's do some prospecting and cold calling together. Myself as a sales leader, you've seen me. Yep. I'll pick up the phone and cold call right there with you. I might knock some out of the park. I might fall flat on my face on some. It doesn't matter how good you are. You're going to get told no more than you're told yes, regardless. But as a sales leader, you need to get out and actually show that you're willing to do the same work that you're asking your people to do.
On some of those weeks too, where you make 120 prospecting attempts and let's say you don't get 8 CNAs for the next week, the good news is for those 120 attempts that you made out, you've at least planted the seed. We talked about that in a previous podcast. I can't remember which one because we took a little bit of a hiatus. But you're as a farmer in this aspect of it, you're planting the seed where it may not be this week or the immediate next week that they even get back to you, but it could be a week or two down the road. And that's why you got to continue to prospect. I had an account where I had prospected them almost weekly, daily. I'd go in there all the time, try and catch the owners when they were there. And it took months, 6-7 months of me going there once a week at least and sending emails, making calls, and never would I be able to get them. But eventually at the end of the day, they took note that I was continuous and I was persistent and I went after it and they said, okay, let's give them a shot. So we went in, had the CNA. It was a great CNA. We figured something out, and now they're on the books with us.
You know what that makes me think of? I saw it. It wasn't a meme, but it was just a kind of a quote that said, if all account executives knew how many times if they would have just made one more touch point or one more call, how many more of these accounts they would have closed, it'd make you sick, because that's usually what it takes. And we talk about this. You keep on marching forward until you get a flat no. And then you just pivot till, okay, well, we'll reach back out in a couple months because we feel pretty passionate about that we can help you guys. So we'll follow back up when it's a better time. But you got to stay persistent. If you're not persistent, then you're probably not going to get the client, because as much as we would like to think that we should be at the top of their priority list, we're not. They got a lot more other important things, and they are so busy that it's really tough to rattle their cage enough to get them to pay attention to you. But if you maybe just make that one more call, that one more email, stopping by one more time with your business card, it's crazy how often that'll work. And I was guilty of this occasionally as an account executive too. I'd get frustrated and move on, but you need to continue to march forward until you get a flat no, and then you pivot.
And one of the things I know before we move on, this is an important thing too, is we mentioned it earlier in this exact podcast, is when you go on the meetings and you've got 5 different ideas, use those same 5 different ideas. Even if you don't have the meeting, obviously you don't tell them every bit of it, but in your VBR, in your calls, your emails, because if you pitch a specific idea for some VBR related to Q4 and driving in traffic during the winter months, maybe that's not already a month that they need help bringing people in for. Maybe what they actually need help in is branding their social media during the holiday season, or getting top of mind awareness, or something other than what your immediate VBR is that you've been trying to reach them 4 or 5 times on. What I've done is I've actually went a different direction after the 4th or 5th attempt. I go, well, clearly this isn't something that they're interested in. What if I did this instead, or sent them a different piece of audio, or something that's an extra effort step that a normal account executive wouldn't do, that might at least get me in the door to at least get a response back that says, hey, I'm not a huge fan of this commercial. If you did it like this, maybe I'd be a little bit more interested. That's perfect. Let's set up a time to connect and we can see on that. And I can show you what it could look like then.
That's taking full accountability and grabbing the bull by the horns is really what that is. I'd say probably 90% of account executives don't do that. You continue to come back with other ideas and other approaches. You will eventually, at any point, if they don't like them, they're going to take a meeting with you just because they're impressed with how resilient you are and how much you come back. So I love that you said that, because that's something that's left out a ton. One other thing, because we're running low on time and we get really wordy on this stuff because we're passionate about it. One of my favorite things as a sales leader in the IFM or one-on-one is to talk about open proposals and action steps needed to close it. I want to be able to, keep track of every open proposal that we have. How long has it been sitting out? What's holding it up? Are they just thinking about it? Did you get a no? And then at that point, let's collaborate. Do we need to tweak the idea? Do we need to come up with a different spec spot? Do we need to bring a little more added value to get the client excited about what we're doing? And that typically can spark an idea and take a situation with a client that was dead and inject some life back into it.
It's the same motto that we use with radio clients in the radio world, is you want to stay top of mind. It's the same thing with our clients that we're actively pursuing. If we've got a proposal out to them and they go, yeah, I'll look at it in a week or 2 and then I'll get back to you. Continue to stay. Don't just sit back and wait on it. Be the one that's going to email them, call them, say, hey, I know we talked last week. Let me know if you have any questions. Or later in the week, say, hey, I know we were kind of eyeing Friday as our time to connect after you've had a chance to review it. Let me know if there's anything that I can do on our end. Whatever it may be, just another way to get in the door and let them know, hey, I'm still here. I'm still very interested in partnering with you in your business. Let's figure out a way that we can do this.
Another thing that's probably the least amount of fun in a one-on-one to talk about is your aging report. Are you in a bad spot with how many clients that you have that owe us money? And if how many people do you have that are 90 days past due? Coming up with a strategic plan on how I can help the account executive help you get those balances caught up. And then maybe are we identifying a gap where were we not clear with the client immediately? Like, this isn't a non-for-profit. We gotta pay every month. This is how it goes. And I think most clients get that, but staying ahead of that aging report is huge, because that's probably the least fun of being an account executive for most people that you would ask them. It would be cold calling and your aging report. Those are probably 2 of the biggest things, but it's necessary in that meeting to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on that and that we're managing that in an effective way. Because again, we have a huge responsibility of making sure that the company that we represent is profitable and that we're doing the right things by the organization.
Yeah, and I know, especially from the account executive side, being able to look at that aging report, and sometimes stuff comes up where I know I just had a client where we had to move some stuff around with the video shoot, but the billing team didn't get known that we needed to move stuff around. So they had been billed for an additional month that we actually didn't have anything run. So we had to go back and fix that on our end.
Yeah.
And had I not looked at the IFM during the IFM, the aging report, I might not have even caught that. So being able to look at that and say, okay, here's my action steps for every single one of these clients that are either past due or getting closer to past due. Let's figure out a way that we can nullify some of that and knock some of that out.
And throughout this process, let's turn our phones off and put them away. That's important. I know as a sales leader that you're constantly getting pinged all the time. As an account executive, you're constantly getting pinged all the time. It's really easy to get sidetracked. Turn your phones off, put them away during that hour, and focus on each other and strategizing. That's hugely important. And to close up on this, the last thing that I really want to talk about, and there's lots of other things that we could include, because your percent to goal and the plan to get there and how much money you have on the books, I mean, that is the entry level stuff. So we're not really going into that because everybody knows that that's something that's talked about in that whole process, and how many people you're prospecting and cold calling and all of that, your activity. As a sales leader, I really like to continue to touch base on big picture goals. And are we on path to get those big picture goals? Are you trying to get to this amount of monthly billing revenue by this point? Are you trying to make President's Club? At our media organization, we have different account executive classification tiers where when you reach a certain level, you get essentially like a prize pack, if you will, and a status within the organization where you get recognized. And, if that's one of your big goals, are we on path to get there? Are we doing the right things? And I like to be able to really focus on fine tuning the steps that are going to get us there, but to acknowledge, are we on the right path? Do you want to eventually become a sales leader within the organization? Is that one of your big goals? What are your goals, and are we taking the necessary action steps to get you there? And that's something that the progress on that needs to be followed up on every single week, because if you take your eye off the prize, you can veer off that road, and next thing you know, 3 months has gone by and you've lost focus on what your overall goal is.
Well, and I'll just chime in quickly on the AE side. You should have a goal, and it shouldn't just be, I want to get X client signed next week.
No.
You should have some short-term ones, yes, but then there should also be ones that you're constantly striving for week after week. Like Adam said, if it's hitting President's Club, if it's hitting a specific AE classification, even if it's in 5 years, I want to be able to live comfortably and be able to have a paycheck where I'm not sitting there wondering what it's going to be, or whatever your goals may be individually, whatever your specific values are and what you value. You should have something each week that you're striving for that's not just, I'm going to close the next deal that comes across my plate.
Yep, nailed it. And then put together the small action steps to get there. What fundamentals do we need to work on? What skill sets do we need to develop? What things do we need to get better at? How are we going to attack that goal? I like to be relentless. We set a goal, we're going to hit it. We're going to do anything it takes to get it. And not anything, we're not going to do anything dishonest, but
within reason,
we're going to put forth the work and the effort to get it done. So this wraps up another episode of the Local Lens Media Podcast. Guys, make sure to like, subscribe, share. We really appreciate you listening, and we apologize for being off for the last 4 weeks, but you know how it is. Q4, you got to tee it up. We got to be ready to go and got to finish the year strong and be ready going into 2025 with a lot of momentum, don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. This is the busiest time for media, especially getting meetings for the end of Q4 and then starting into Q5 or Q5 2025.
They added another quarter. This is terrible news.
It just constantly keeps revolving.
All right, everybody, and make sure in media, remember, you need to be known before you're needed. We'll see you next time.